Welcome, friends, to our satsang this afternoon with my friends Nayaswamis Padma and Hriman from Ananda Seattle. Welcome to both of you. And today, as we continue this Whispers from Eternity series of interviews with people that share or have shared Whispers from Eternity to different audiences, online mostly these days, but often in person as well. And so we get to discover what strikes their heart about Whispers from Eternity. We get some tips and ways in which we can dive in for ourselves. So thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to be with you again. We've had a few years where we've not been in contact. I've been away from Ananda, and so it's very nice to be with you today.
Great to see
Great
you.
to see you, Sanjan, and thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So I don't know if one of you would like to start with a prayer and just set the tone for the satsang.
Okay. Well, let's put aside the activities of the day or whatever others may be doing and open the door of the heart. Lift the mind to the point between the eyebrows and let us invoke the presence of the Masters, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and our beloved Master, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, and saints of East and West, we open our hearts to Thee as we attune ourselves to Your whispers from eternity. Bless us that we feel Your presence, that we listen with our hearts, and receive with our minds Thy guidance. Om. Peace. Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'll let you introduce yourself in just a moment, but I moved to Ananda Village in 2009, and of course had connected with you from various talks online. But we got to know each other over the years, and I am good friends with your daughter and son-in-law, Gita, your daughter, and son Badri. And I know Tulsi. I don't know Jay so well, but I know Jay. So it must be a real joy to connect with your family. Are you connecting with them during this time? I mean, have you seen them since last year, or have you not really?
No, only on WhatsApp and Marco Polo.
Yeah, Marco Polo. What's Marco Polo? You're up on this more than I am.
It's you can send little videos to each other. It's strictly video based.
Wow. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Well, you're teaching me. I feel very grateful for that.
Well, our children are teaching us, so.
And did you miss the contact, seeing them, kind of, or?
Oh,
Yeah.
very much, very
Yeah.
much. They grow so much right now, and
I can
we're
imagine.
missing all these amazing stages.
Yeah, well, thank goodness for Facebook and other things like Marco Polo, because I get to see pictures of them, and I remember us kind of connecting in the living room of Badri and Gita's apartment and being with the grandchildren and just having great satsang and just connecting as friends, because we've kind of connected over the years, as I said, and then through the Kriya Sangha and through online with Ananda before that. But maybe just share with us, whatever you want to about what's going on now, or briefly also how you came to Ananda and when that was, and just for our viewers that may not know you. I think most of them will, but maybe some don't.
I want to choose a story. It's a long story.
Yeah, well, you're asking for lots of stories here, lots of different stories. I came to Ananda. I first went to Ananda village before it was a village. It was 1970 to the old retreat, on retreat,
Wow.
and then moved there in 1973, again to what we used to call the old retreat. It's now the seclusion retreat. And lived there until 93. So that's 20 years. And then in 1993, Swami Kriyananda, and we raised our children there. And then in 1993, Swami Kriyananda invited us, asked us if we would like to move to Ananda. At the time, it was called Ananda Seattle. We call it Ananda Washington now,
Okay.
because we have locations in a variety of places. And in fact, right now, we no longer have any locations in Seattle proper.
Oh, okay.
We used to have the bookstore in Seattle, and we used to have a teaching center there. But now with COVID, the bookstore is online. And of course, we no longer have the rented facility of the teaching center in Seattle. We now have the beautiful Blue Lotus Temple and yoga hall.
Just stunning, isn't it? That's just such a beautiful. I remember visiting in 2016, and it's just so beautiful, the vibration. And I think the yoga hall was just at that stage. Was it? It was just being released. It was just
Finished.
Literally, I think when we were there.
2015 it got started. I think we finished it in 2016. Wow. So it has served us incredibly well. That beautiful complex is and grounds, stunning landscape grounds. It's located in the suburb of Bothell, north of Seattle. And now we also have Ananda community in Linwood, as well as on Camino Island at the farm, but also many other members are moving around the farm.
And so just to clarify, Linwood is separate to Camino, or is that one and the same?
It's separate. Camino is an hour north of Linwood.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember visiting Camino as well with Zach and Haley, who are just amazing people who I remember stepping foot on the land there, and just it was a dynamic energy there. And I know the people from all over Ananda come and retreat there and serve and train and do all sorts there. So incredible.
Yeah, it's doing beautifully.
It's surprising in these few years. I mean, it is a farm. So in these few years since you were here, Sanjan, you might not even recognize it. The orchard's grown up. Everything there plant-wise has matured. There are new outbuildings. A house construction will start on that very soon. A lot of changes have taken place in just a few years.
I can well imagine, because I think just the whole community is behind them, and then also they're very creative and dynamic as well, and so they look to you both as well. So it's just wonderful to see. I think the whole of Ananda is in awe of just what they're creating there, and you all are creating.
Yes.
So,
and last fall, in the midst of COVID, we started a campaign. It launched October 3rd online to pay off our temple grounds and yoga hall. The mortgage was about, well, that in combination with a few other loans was about 1.11 million. And within 3 months, we received all those donations to pay off those loans and be free and clear, be debt free. So
wow,
that frees us up to serve more freely, to serve online, and keeps us out of trouble.
Spectacular. Master's keeping you busy. Master's keeping you very busy. And then also the other thing that I wanted to bring up, because it kind of ties into a little bit about Whispers, what I was going to just mention, but at your beautiful Blue Lotus temple, you had this event with many kind of paths of religions and you know, a special celebration day. I think Jyotish and Devi came down. Is that correct? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? That was maybe a couple of years ago, where
You know, all of the West Coast centers participated for a couple of years running in summer type programs. And perhaps that's what you mean, you know.
oh no, I think it was like you had like a Buddhist, you know, I can't
Yeah,
remember exactly, but you
that's
had
right.
these,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we held the event at Bastyr College, which is
Mhm.
a naturopathic
Okay,
university.
yeah.
But we were planning to hold last year's events at our temple,
Mhm.
at our Blue Lotus temple, but then COVID came. So
Yeah.
it wasn't able to happen. However, we have invited some of those speakers to speak at our Sunday services as our guest.
Beautiful.
So we had the Sufi speaker, we had the Jewish rabbi, and we have a very nice connection with them.
That's wonderful. And you know, the reason I bring it up just because, you know, Master in his book really dedicates it to all true paths and not just to us as guru bhais, although of course we are loving diving, we get so much as his disciples diving into it to tune into him, but it really feels like this universal book of answered prayers. So and this is Whispers from Eternity. I sometimes forget to introduce the book itself, but this is Whispers from Eternity. You got yours there. We got it in stereo, and I'll just read one introduction on the inside cover, and it says, "For those of all religions looking for a practical way to feel God more closely in their lives, here is a non-sectarian devotional scripture that honors God in the form of Jesus Christ, Buddha, Moses, Muhammad, Krishna, and nature, and points us towards the singular spiritual highway of self-realization." It's a magical book that's touched my heart in the past year, and maybe just you have just completed a series of reading, starting at the beginning and reading each whisper over a period of time. When did you first connect to whispers, and you know, was this something that was always on your book, you know, in your bookshelf? What did Swami mention it? And Padma, I think you were in the publishing as well. I mean, was that internationally? And lots of points that I'm giving you to pick up on, but just, you know, what was it for you personally in the beginning with Whispers when it touched you? Was it for many? Was it like for you, like for many, that it wasn't so easy to dive in straight away, or was it something that you loved immediately? You know, either of you, both of you.
You know, when the original edition of Whispers was published by, shall we say, another organization, that's when it first started to resonate with me. Um, and then when Swami edited it, which was a bit of a shock, honestly, I remember a talk he did in which he praised the original Whispers, and then before you knew it, he went and edited it. And but yet the edited version was, which we now use, is the one that resonates with me mostly.
Mhm.
Prior to that, it wasn't as easy, at least for me, to tune into. I was raised Catholic, and the thous and the these and so forth, you know, were both familiar, but also came with a little bit of, you know, baggage. But Swami has really clarified the writing, as of course he intended to do, and spending this whole year going one after the other and rereading, the introduction. His introduction is powerful, and then at the end, though we didn't read it, he has an explanation of cosmology and Divine Mother that is, as close to the poem Samadhi, which is also in there, as one could get, except that it's in prose rather than poetry, and although it's very poetic. So I have to say that by actually reading it and responding to the inspiration in the moment, broadcast live, was an opportunity to actually really feel it in a deeper way for me.
Yeah, carry on, Padma. Thank you, Riemann. And I will come back to that, but maybe Padma share.
Well, I just wanted to say that Swami Kriyananda, as you all know, when he developed the format for our current Sunday service, it was in the mid-'80s. Before that, we had a slightly different format when we didn't have the Festival of Light. But nevertheless, he always included a Whispers from Eternity in every Sunday service. And of course, because we were giving service, it helped me to tune in more deeply to the Whispers from Eternity. And it has been amazing to me in this period during COVID, when we were doing daily talks, brief talks on Whispers from Eternity. We kept it brief. It was meant to be a touch of inspiration and not make people feel like it would take up too much of their day. But nevertheless,
there's great wisdom in that.
Yeah, nevertheless, it helped me to tune in even more deeply and find, in fact, some whispers that I had never come across before, because I hadn't been giving a Sunday talk on that particular topic. So this was just a great year that way for us.
Yes, I mean, and just, I think it is a wonderful way to tune in, because various people are leading things with whispers. But what I do like about yours is that it is this, number one, it goes from number one all the way through, which has a power in itself, because Master himself gives that option at the beginning and says, develop cosmic consciousness by reading a whisper a day. And that's really what you're leading people to do if they tune into it through in that way. But also that 10 minutes is just, it's for some people, that's even, that's all that people have. And so it's a wonderful way for people to tune into that. And I got to see, the thrills that you had just exploring these whispers at times. I didn't tune into everyone, but I did get to kind of just see the joy that came through about, how Master just guides you, his wording, his the feeling that is evoked when you read these whispers. It's something so very special. So I will, just for our listeners, our watchers, our audience, once this video has gone, once we finish the live event, soon afterwards, at some point today, I'll put a blurb in, and I'll put a link to the Ananda Washington YouTube channel and I'll specifically tune into the whispers, although please do explore their many other offerings as well at that point. So yes, and what shall I say now? I mean, with that introduction, because it is just like you said, Riemann, I mean, it is so expansive, not only in showing you how to pray effectively, but also just this journey on the spiritual path. I mean, and also some of the ending chapters. And one thing that I think I said to you, I may bring up, but just to pull out of it, because I always mentioned the introduction, but I never specifically focus on something. And I wanted to pull one thought out because it's been speaking to me the last few weeks. It's so rich, and it's in the section called Watching the Cosmic Motion Picture of Life, and it's on page 22. It's the third paragraph, and Master says, learn to view everything as passing and temporary. Don't look for, in inverted commas, happy endings. And then again, real life has no endings at all, which just jumped out at the page at me. Anything to comment on that or any other aspects of the introduction?
Do you remember, Sanjan, in the conversations with Yogananda, when Swamiji asks him, or somebody asks Yogananda, where does it all end? When does it all end? And he says it ends in endlessness.
Yes.
And Swami, in his talks, would often make a reference to the great nights and days of Brahma. And I forget who it was asked him the question, Yogananda, the question, well, gee, if I achieve my liberation, do I have to come back in the next day of Brahma? And Master Yogananda assured him he did not. And then the last quote I'll mention is from Anandamui Ma, and I think of this last year and all the turmoil with the politics and pandemic, etc. That Anandamui Ma was back in the 30s asked by somebody who was despairing for the state of affairs in the world, or at least in India, and she said, "Don't you think that he who created this world knows how to run it?" And sometimes I question that. However, I think we all do.
Me too.
There are days I'm not sure anybody's in charge, but more seriously, I think that's a very important lesson that a devotee eventually has to face, because I think we all have this innate desire for perfection, right? We want to do things right ourselves, et cetera, but at some point you realize that the world's going to go on as it is, and that only souls one by one can achieve the happiness we seek. A nation or a race or a religion, they don't sort of ascend like the Christians believe in the rapture or something. The world will go on as it is, and it has to for the drama. Master said in the essence of self-realization, he said the purpose of the lesson of this, the drama of life, is that it is simply it is a drama. That's the lesson, and it's a school, and we're here to graduate. We're not here to make the school perfect. So that's not an easy lesson to pass, even for devotees, because we want everything to be beautiful and happy and so on and so forth. But boy, when I think of Swamiji and who he was, what he was like, when I think of the deeper disciples that I've had the privilege to meet, there's a down-to-earth acceptance quality to the path that can be joyful, but at the same time not Pollyannish. And that's not an easy place for most devotees that I observe to actually get to, a state of being realistic and also inspired at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a very demanding introduction as well as insightful, but it is, Master is not sugarcoating it for you. He's telling you exactly where it is. Any thoughts on it, Padma, or does that feel good for you there for that?
Well, it feels complete to that quote. My only thought, based on what you were just saying, is that it's as if each of the whispers is like a diamond, like a many-faceted diamond of our spiritual nature, not our human nature. And it sort of zeroes in on that particular quality, that particular attitude, and it just shines a big bright light on it. And what I found is that in the rereading of them, and I continue to reread them, even though our program finished,
Yes.
is that it's a little bit like rereading autobiography of a yogi. Every time you do, there's something more, a hidden gem that was there all along, but you didn't see it because your karma just hadn't accumulated to just the right spot in order to see it in that moment. And something new jumps off the page at you, and some new insight that helps you gain greater insight into your spiritual life and how to keep taking steps along the path.
Yes. Yeah, and did you find, because I haven't read it from Whisper 1 to Whisper 217, and then of course there's the poems and the children's poems, but did you find any kind of, themes at all coming through? Because the one thing you had just mentioned, Padma, and was really about these masters giving us these attitudes to kind of adopt to help us on our spiritual path. But the themes that I kind of found, there were quite a few, but things like just masters really trying to get you out of this body and this mortal frame and get you into experiencing God all around you. Were there things that kind of stuck out through that experience of reading the different whispers that kind of, struck you in any way during that time?
For me, the rich metaphor and the imagery that he uses, it's so powerful. But if I were to identify a theme, and until you've asked the question or brought up this question, I'd never really thought about it. But the one thing, like a thread, at least for me, that goes through the whispers is that unveiling, unmasking, pardon about the mask thing, the 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 divine behind all experiences, plus and minus, and of course a lot of nature imagery is natural to poetry, etc. But that theme of seeing past the visible to the invisible, that's kind of a philosophical way of putting it, and I don't really mean it that way, but that's the theme that I see is everywhere. Look through, look past, look beneath, whatever. The reality and poetic imagery, of course, it's like a piece of, I mean, it's art, of course. It's like a musical instrument, but it uses imagery. I mean, it's perfect because you naturally, you get the image, let's say something, the moon or the sun, fine, we understand that. But we know automatically, like a note on a violin, we know automatically there's a feeling aspect to it. So that unveiling the Divine Mother behind all seeming, behind all appearances is, for me, the theme.
Yeah. Anything for you, Padma?
The first part and even the middle part, I remember thinking it's as if he's giving us a bird's eye view on life, on attitudes, on qualities for the spiritual life. He's sort of, if you'll pardon the imagery, he's pulling the camera back so you can see a little further and you can see the big picture and where it all fits in.
Yeah.
And that is needed and very, very helpful. And then it's at the very end of the prayer demands
Mhm.
that they get more into liberation. They get more into your spiritual freedom, the going through the spiritual, just really zooming to samadhi. And it's zooming, that's another pun. I'm so sorry. Now I know where they got all this terminology.
Wow. Well,
Anyway,
yeah.
that was my sense of the prayer demands, and especially the latter ones. It was just, you could dance an eternity with him in those those latter ones. So
And did both of you, like for me, when I came to Whispers, when I came to the path in 2009, and I bought Whispers somewhat near the beginning, it may have been 2010, I'm not sure. And I really tried to dive into it, but it wasn't, I didn't kind of crack it, at that stage. It didn't come into my heart. And it was really in this last year that I dived into it. How has it been for you? Was it something that you could immediately get into straight away, or have you found that this period of going into it over the last year, that's when it's really seeped in? How's it?
Early on in COVID, a thought occurred to me, and I don't know its source or what triggered it. But early on, I had the thought, something happened, and I had the thought that poetry during this COVID period, not to be limited to the COVID period, but that what our culture needed were, so, with all the polarization and all the words, everybody was throwing words around and ideas. And somewhere there last March, a year ago or so, or like we saw in the inauguration, how much resonance there was with that poetry. But way back earlier, and I remember talking to one of our members, and she likes poetry a lot. And I said, poetry, people are reaching for poetry, because whereas music is really more than words, it is a higher, more, to my mind, a higher and more refined communication in the arts and consciousness. When you look at popular music, it's so unrefined that between our chanting and Swami's music, there's a gap. But poetry, because we're a word-based culture, a left-brained culture, is that the left side? Anyway, poetry lifts our inclination to use words to a higher octave of communication and feeling. Feeling is the key. It's like our culture desperately needs feeling and intuition. And when that thought came to me almost a year ago, I realized that this could be a real art form that could help with people's connecting with each other. And although Padma and I didn't start Whispers until April, maybe?
no, it was mid-March.
It was mid-March. So we started, it was Padma's idea. But anyway, this idea occurred to me, and I was ripe for master poetry. But I will say, as I did earlier, in the beginning, in those years, I always enjoyed Whispers, but until this year, with really having every day the opportunity to do exactly what he asked us to do in the introduction, and actually have to read it and then have something come through, it was very uplifting. And I think we're going to see a renaissance, if that's the word, with Master's poetry. We started it. Now Dharmadas is doing it. Jyotish is doing it. Poetry holds the key, I think, for our culture right now.
Absolutely, and I think it's no mistake. I'm glad that you brought up Amanda Gorman. I was meant to bring it up with Jyotish and Devi and forgot, but it just struck such a chord, that poem, and the way that she read it. And then I saw some interviews afterwards, and she really just said that she was a vessel, which in a way is what Master is asking us to be when we read Whispers. I just think it stuck. It's no mistake in a way that we are coming to poetry, to Master's Whispers, that many people are coming to it. And then it's no coincidence, I don't think, that here Amanda Gorman comes along and opens the consciousness wide open on definitely in our country. I don't know how many people on a global level connected into the inauguration, but certainly she's a phenomenon now. And people would quite rightly, as young children as well as adults, might aspire to be poets and to study that. And it's cool to be into poetry now. It's something that people don't feel bad about. They see it as something that really can bypass all of the noise of everything going on, which is what you were saying. So thank you for bringing that up. And
You know, it's interesting that we call it poetry because it certainly does feel like poetry.
mm,
The reality is that they're prayer demands, and
yes.
it's not like they rhyme, but they do have a rhythm. They have a melody, they have a harmony, they have a rhythm. And having followed Whispers from Eternity now, when we finished all the prayer demands except the children's,
Mm-hmm.
we've moved on to Rubaiyat. And of course, Rubaiyat
Mm,
is poetry. And it is, I remember talking with Swami about this at the time, but just the perception early on that it had the writing had a rhythm. Even when he was writing the paraphrase or the expanded meaning, all the writing in the book has a rhythm. And all of Master's writing and Swami's writing, when you look at it closely, has a rhythm, even if it's not overt poetry. They took great care into bringing harmony, melody, balance into, and sometimes rhyming into their writing. So it is, as Riemann was describing, just in the way that music is a higher octave, if you'll pardon the pun, of communication, so are these prayer demands in Whispers from Eternity and Autobiography of a Yogi. I mean, every sentence has beautiful rhythm and much depth and meaning, and joy, you know. So
really. I
yeah.
just sometimes I just, it's just so amazing to think that Master was on the ship to America and he didn't know a word really of speaking English or American, and just he really puts us all to shame, especially me being English, but just the way that he can write and both, just as you were saying, Swami, they're just, I mean, did they speak about what any capacity of in the past lives of being in a Shakespeare or something like this? Have they ever mentioned, has Swami or Master ever mentioned anything on that front?
Not a famous writer that I can think of, but a deep appreciation for good writing, for Shakespeare, for instance, for beautiful, well-written things.
Sanjan, did you ever hear the story that the Catholic Church endorsed that the prayer of Saint Francis was found on the body of William the Conqueror 2 centuries before Francis lived,
No, I didn't.
and that therefore it is believed now that the famous prayer of Saint Francis was composed by William the Conqueror,
Who was master?
who was master.
Oh, my goodness, no, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but Swami tells an amusing story how when somebody praised his writing and compared him to Shakespeare, he said the next day he sat down to write and he was thinking how to please his audience and he couldn't write a word. And finally, he just laughed at his own mind and forgot all that business and went on with his work. But yes, of course, how could either of them really have brought such an incredible talent from the past? It would seem to me.
Yeah. So when did they find that out about William the Conqueror and the?
Swami used to talk about it, but
Yeah.
only in the last 10 or 15 years of his life.
Yeah.
That he heard about it.
Wow. Okay. So
I don't remember what the source was.
Yeah, I went online at that time and verified it. I didn't keep any of that information, but it was pretty amazing.
That is incredible. So
Yeah.
wow, amazing. So if people want to tune into your Rubaiyat talks, are they the same format, like 10 minutes, kind of shorter reading from each one a day? Is that's the format?
Yes. Monday through Friday. Padma's 10 minutes and I'm 15 minutes.
Here's the thing, Sanjan. We do hope to offer a more in-depth course in the Rubaiyat upcoming because you can't do it justice in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's so much there. But you can touch on an aspect of it, which is what we do. And then we do hope to sew it all together into a bigger program sometime later in the year.
I think we were inspired. It just sort of happened, but I think our inspiration towards the Rubaiyat was a direct result of Whispers. And, when I think of, you can talk about the philosophy, right? But somehow when it comes to you through the imagery and just the whole vibration of something like the Rubaiyat, it takes on a color that the mere words and the mere philosophy don't convey. And I think that's sort of what I was trying to say a little bit earlier. I think people, they don't need to, some of the principles of self-realization, Advaita, Vedanta, etc., are pretty well recognized. And these days, unlike long ago, decades ago, let's say, but people want inspiration. They want the feeling element there. So it adds a dimension that it seems to me people are hungry for.
Yeah, and for me, definitely the biggest thing that I would say that really exploring Whispers has done is I have deep feeling for God now, whereas I was devoted and I was sincere in my devotion, but now my feeling nature and feeling God's presence is completely transformed by diving into Whispers and really trying to churn the inspiration out by working with it. So,
and you had mentioned quoting Master in your thing with Jyotishan Devi that he listed Whispers as one of the scriptures. And Padma, what does Master say? When I am gone, read my whispers from eternity.
Yeah, I will speak to you through my whispers from eternity.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's a great way to tune in to Master. Anything else that do you want to read a whisper? Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that
I did want to say, Sanjan, that very quote we just spoke of is what inspired us to start doing the whispers every day, because he said he would speak to us through whispers from eternity. And we thought, what better inspiration to offer people than Master speaking to them every day a little bit at 12 o'clock. And we found, our staff has found that we automatically record from Vimeo to Facebook to YouTube simultaneously. It hasn't been that way since from the beginning. That started a few months into it. So you won't necessarily find all of it on YouTube. You would find it on our Vimeo channel. You'll find a lot of it on YouTube, but not all of it. Anyway, all that to say is many hundreds of people are watching each episode, maybe not, definitely not in the moment, but afterwards.
Well, that's, just as a kind of slight side point, I remember speaking to Usha just about, kind of these broadcasts being live and things, and that she never really worried about how many people showed up live. It was always after the fact where you get the biggest numbers. So I kind of relaxed around it after then.
Yeah.
So that's great to know that you have a Vimeo channel. I love that. I've never heard of doing it through Vimeo and then it goes to Facebook and YouTube. That's great. I'll have to, because I have a Vimeo account. Maybe I can do that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very helpful. We do everything that way.
Right. And then, so I presume also because you've done it on Facebook, I think that it should be on Facebook still as well.
Yes.
So people can access it in those ways. So the Rubaiyat is 12 o'clock as well. Is that true?
Yes, it is. It's exactly the same. But I should say that on Facebook, our account is called Ananda Seattle and Bothell.
Okay.
As opposed to Ananda Washington.
Okay, so we're keeping us on our toes.
That's right. Just like Swami Kriyananda with 7 names.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, would you like a whispers?
I would always like a whisper. So yes, is the answer for that.
Actually, I should do that. How about the rocket of my love?
That sounds awesome.
I withdrew the life force from my body, the breath which had kept me tied to the burden of flesh no longer shook my awareness. My rocket of life penetrated through the star in the all-seeing eye of light in my forehead. The rocket soared outward, its cone of focused concentration and deep feeling exploded to oneness with the countless atoms of space and with the little points of self-awareness in all beings. At last, like an expanding cloud nebula, I embraced the vast spirit beyond space itself to enter the heart of thine omnipresent silence.
Wow, so amazing. He's just got one of the things that I really feel is one way that you can tune into whispers. I mean, there's various that Master mentions, but one of them is just there's so much that mentions either in the title or in the whisper itself about meditation. And if you're someone struggling with meditation or you want to deepen it, it's a wonderful way to take whispers and with that purpose to dive deeper. I mean, thank you for sharing it. What whisper number was that?
That's number 213. It's towards the very end. It's one of those ones I was talking about where he takes you into cosmic consciousness.
Wow. It's just
besides the poem Samadhi, of course.
Yeah.
Do you have
Thank you
one?
for sharing that. Do you want to do one, Riemann, or you?
Oh,
You don't have
well,
to.
yeah, I hadn't picked one. I thought we were
Okay.
just going to do one.
One is
So,
perfect.
okay.
So, do you mind if I share one?
Not at all, of course.
Now, the reason I mean, you guys know them all, but the only reason I want to share it is because it reminds me of the rocket, the one that you just shared, because I mean, just Master is absolutely incredible in just one of the things I feel about whispers is that you really have to, as he says in the introduction, speak them as if you are the child of God. You've accepted the divine inheritance, and it's like as you say these whispers and you tune into that inspiration, you are creating that reality is true as you say it, and it helps you to. I mean, I feel that Master's blessing you, and you're getting to know Master, as you were saying, like as you read these whispers, he's kind of blessing you and giving you an extra, depth by reading them. But also because you're really, it's not like I'm hoping to get to there. This is true right now as I read this. It's amazing. And so let me just read this one. Hang on. Well, I got a different one that's come up. Let me just see if I got it. Okay, so this one is also very great for meditation, but quite a deep one as well. It's Whisper 159, Demand to be fed with the cosmic rays. I don't know if you remember this one.
Yes.
I entered my temple of silence. Seated with a straight spine, I switched off the dazzling, diverting light of energy, animating my sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. I commanded my breath to cease its cleansing work in the body and make no noise. I ordered my heart to suspend its dictatorship over my myriad body cells, forcing them to eat the blood it sends them. I sat still and listened, and Mother, I heard the soft approach of thy footsteps. Thou didst come, bearing an overflowing chalice of life-sustaining spiritual rays. Sustain me evermore, O Divine Mother, with the rays of life-giving light. The heart, cells, brains, and thoughts of this body, thy body, not mine, will waste no longer with decay. Lo, they are now immortal with thy everlasting life.
Beautiful.
They do make you want to meditate, don't they?
They absolutely do. And meditation really is a key part of it. Yeah. So do you have a favorite whisper or one that you are returning to at the moment, or are you just kind of going by inspiration? By opening up the book or
That's always how I've done it. I just open up the book. It's a little
Mhm.
bit like
Yeah.
autobiography. It doesn't matter where you go. I know he may,
Exactly.
I mean, Master says some other things, when you have a particular need, but I've always found it the random approach technique to be a good one.
I think
So
I think a
yeah,
lot of people do that approach, and I do myself at times. So I think it's a very common approach, and it's good for people to hear that is an approach. So yeah. How about
Yeah.
Padma?
Well, um, I know Jyotish has been doing one before each of his meditations, which is a very good practice. I haven't had that with my daily times, but I have done that in seclusion
Yes.
where I don't go randomly, but I take one with each meditation or within an hour or two within each meditation. And the combination of meditation with the whispers is dynamite,
It
you
is
know,
dynamite.
nothing like it. It's not like you want to read one and run off to your busy day. It's you want to bring it into the stillness.
Mm. That's beautiful, and it's great to know. That's great to actually mention for people to take it for a retreat, to use and to dive deeply into it. I think that's very practical. I'm actually leading an online Whispers retreat a week on Saturday on the 27th, where we kind of will meditate together and we'll do a little bit of how to pray effectively from the introduction. But then we're going to take one, maybe two whispers, because I've never led one of the like this, but just an opportunity to dive in. But I think it's I've always felt that, not always, but in this last year when I've been diving into it, I've felt that it's a great tool for a retreat, and it's wonderful that you've shared that. Because people sometimes, especially when they're new, but even long-time devotees, well, you've been here a few years, get a little daunted what to do on retreat, even though meditate and tune into God. I think it's a very practical way to give them something like this.
But even I even for teaching regular classes, I try to weave in whispers to the class because it gives those attending a taste of whispers, even if they're brand new, especially if they're brand new.
Mm.
And it's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Swami used, in the early days of Ananda, when he did his classes, he would always have a whispers reading.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, and it's just when I was speaking with Asha, she just spoke of how, when she was speaking with him, that he really said that whispers informed his spiritual life. He got that early on, and of course, she kind of said that he expanded upon that, which is in the introduction, that it really taught him the right attitude to have in every circumstance that you might come across in the spiritual path. So just wonderful to kind of see how much it's impacted someone like Swami Kriyananda, and just how much deep feeling Swami had, of course, and just very much into the arts. And then also seeing Master, as you've beautifully said to tune into my whispers, read them, and I will connect with you and speak to you through them. And that he really said it was one of the three scriptures that he came to highlight: the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, and his whispers from eternity, that he said came to him from God. So any last carry on.
He didn't say it, but I think all of us would say there's really a fourth one, and that's his autobiography.
Yes, and I agree with you there for sure. So yeah, you could say that for so many but of course autobiography. I feel that the new path is also a scripture of Swami's,
Right.
but again, you could say that for
Don't forget the essence of the Gita.
right, exactly. So I mean, any last thoughts just to people about Whispers from Eternity?
Read them.
Read them.
Meditate on them.
Meditate on them.
Meditate on them.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, thank you so much, Padma and Riemann. It's been very special spending this time with you. I'll put those links in below for you for the YouTube channel, the Vimeo, and please connect with them on Facebook Live with the Rubaiyat and their past recordings.
Thank you. And please say hello to all our friends at Ananda in Sacramento.
You will do. So thank you so
Okay.
much. Bless you.
Ciao. Bye-bye.